I am excited to welcome in Tim Russell, CEO of the ITA. Tim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me. Been looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. And like I was saying, as we started offline, I'm a huge fan of the ITA, especially from my college playing days and just everything you guys do for the game, to grow the game, to help the game, to educate people on what's going on in the college world. It's a household name, so it's a pleasure to be on with you today.
Well, thank you, and congrats on launching your new brand. I'm happy to hear you think the ITA is a household name because one of our initiatives has been to grow the brand of the ITA. So good luck as you're growing your brand.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you guys because you definitely are doing that. You definitely are doing that. So as before we get into the meat and potatoes, as I like to call it, can you just give me a high level background about yourself and how you became to be the CEO of the ITA?
Yeah, sure. So in the fourth grade, my mother, rest her soul, who herself had been a college varsity player, introduced me to tennis on a city park. And it's kind of hard to believe that I'm now 65, which means it was like 55 years ago when I learned to play tennis. So I played tennis throughout high school and college, but not on any varsity teams. My sports were actually track and basketball, but loved tennis, kept playing tennis. Did my undergrad work at Northwestern and my master's and PhD at Ohio State. And then my wife and I, back in the 80s, actually moved to Naples, Florida. And we actually lived at a tennis community. So we just played all the time. And our kids both started playing tennis in Naples. My son, who now works for USTA Player Development, ended up getting quite good. And then our daughter did as well. 27 years ago, we moved to Arizona. My son was a three-time Arizona State champion, and I got very involved as a tennis volunteer. So I was involved with the USTA at a district level, section level. I became the USTA Southwest section president and delegate. And then I got involved nationally at the USTA, and I ended up chairing the USTA's both their junior competition committee, but also their collegiate varsity committee. So it was at that point I met David Benjamin, who was the 37-year long-time executive director of the ITA. I mean, he's really the reason that college tennis is what it is today. So I started doing some volunteer work for the ITA, including chairing a task force on the D1 format. And then in 2015, David announced his retirement, and I was contacted by the search firm. And as Paul Harvey used to say, now you know the rest of the story, because I'm in my sixth year and having a blast waking up every day, coming to work on behalf of the ITA, but also in service of college tennis and coaches and student athletes.
Yeah, and not only do you have an impressive background, one of the things I'm really impressed with that you said is now you're still waking up and you're excited to go to work every day, and I think that's just so important. And I found that out in many different capacities, but it's about getting up and just getting excited about what you're going to do on a day-to-day basis. And I think when people are excited about what they do, they ultimately have the biggest impact, not only on others, but in their roles. And that's where you see true change come from. It's easy when everything's going well, but when times are tough, that's where you really need to find that love for what you do. So it's good to
Yeah,
hear that.
you're spot on. I actually, when I was a professor at Arizona State University, I actually used to teach a graduate leadership seminar, and literally, you sound like you were a student in my graduate seminar because one of the talking points was it's much easier to be a leader when everything's going great, but I think signs of strong leadership are what do you do in times of challenge, and we've certainly had some of those recently since the onset of the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great segue because, the pandemic has, changed a lot of things, a lot of which, maybe not for the better. And one of them, that's been hard hit has been college tennis, whether it's programs, budget cuts, all of that things. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that, you and your staff at the ITA has faced?
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. And one of the things that we've done even long before the pandemic is we actually created a very solid strategic plan. And it
Mm,
included a number of priorities. I won't list all of them, but for a number of years, the couple that have been at the top have been to raise the profile of college tennis, to tell the stories of college tennis, and also to serve our membership. So having that strategic plan guided us even when the pandemic hit. For the ITA, we were actually quite lucky that we had gotten through our 6 indoor championships right at the end of February, so right before the pandemic hit. So I would like to remind people that at that time, I think college tennis was as strong as it had ever been. And not just because of the work of the ITA and our coaches and our board, but a lot of people are working hard on behalf of college tennis, including the United States Tennis Association and others. So one of the things we tried to do was to continue to shine a light on college tennis. So in the spring, even after the season was canceled, we did a whole series of our awards. And I would remind people that the ITA, as the governing body of college tennis, actually has one of the largest awards programs in all of intercollegiate athletics. We also then went about planning for the summer and this fall. And one of the things we were the most proud of is that early on, I think we were the first organized competition from a governing body that actually got started up. We actually ran 28 of our summer circuit events starting last June. And then when fall came, we did not have our usual array of the usual regionals and the like that the ITA runs and you might have played in when you were at Toledo. So when those didn't happen, we actually continued our summer circuit concept by creating an ITA fall tour. And what we tried to do was demonstrate that tennis is a safe social distancing sport. So much like the summer circuit, our fall tour was singles only. We added 10 weeks with 140 events. We also still ran our Oracle ITA Masters in San Diego, and then we ran our fall championships in Orlando at the USTA's national campus. Both the Oracle event in San Diego and the fall championships were actually broadcast on ESPNU. So we think we've done a pretty good job of continuing to demonstrate college tennis is strong. You are correct that we've lost some programs. We never want that to happen. But I do want to remind people that tennis as a sport in college is still really strong. We actually support 1,200 schools, 1,700 programs across 5 divisions. So that's NCAA divisions 1, 2, and 3, also NAIA and junior college. So while we've lost some programs, we're not the only sport. You know, if people are following, it's been tough for swimming and wrestling, volleyball, and the like. So we never like to lose a program, but we feel through the hard work of our board and our staff that we've managed to keep tennis at the college level not only strong, but on the forefront of people's minds.
yeah, well said. And I heard two really, I mean, there were a lot of important things there, but two things really stuck out to me that I wanted to mention. One was, it's very nice to be able to turn on the tennis channel and watch a college match. I mean, I probably, before the pandemic, I was watching more college tennis than pro tennis. And I mean, it was just so exciting to see some of that just being displayed, whether it's online or on TV. I mean, I think that's something very positive for tennis moving forward. And then to hear how you and your staff, how you've innovated. I mean, just because we have a pandemic, that doesn't mean, the doors closed. That means, hey, let's put our heads together. Let's figure out how do we keep things going? Because to your point, on the other end of this is going to be something stronger and even better for college tennis. So finding unique ways to keep people engaged. I'm very impressed by that, and kudos to you and your staff. I did my research myself, but the depth of what you guys have done just to keep tennis at the forefront and keep athletes playing and supporting different college programs. And you're 100% right. I think there is no athletic program in the nation, or athletic department, I should say, that isn't feeling the brunt of the pandemic. So it goes for all sports, even if they are the mainstream sports: football, basketball, every sport. So it's really about coming together and figuring out what's the pathway forward, and how do we, keep things afloat until we're through it. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, you're spot on. But I think what your very perceptive comment leads to is that we have to be smart moving forward, because I think some people are going, oh, we'll get through the pandemic, we'll get a vaccine, everything will go back to normal. And my assessment is I don't think that's going to be quite so. So one of the things we've been trying to do, in the words of Doug Conant, who's a great mentor and friend of college tennis, used to be the CEO of Campbell Soup, a great leadership scholar, likes to talk about leading in 3 time zones. So we like to think about the past, because college tennis has had a great history, and we've been trying to lead in the present, but we're also trying to think about the future. So if we think about, Chris, what some of the lessons learned are, I think we know that you have, people probably not going to travel as much, budgets are cut back. So we've been trying to think about how we expand our regionals, for example, next year. How do we become more inclusive to get more players and programs functioning? We've tried to re-engage our coaches. It's been tough for the coaches. They haven't been with their teams. They haven't been able to recruit, but they have done a lot of thinking and talking amongst themselves. So, the ITA is getting ready to launch a good study of the D1 tennis model. We want tennis to be strong. If you were to go on our website and look at our vision, we're talking about how does college tennis become one of the most vibrant, sustainable sports. And you mentioned the top sports of football and basketball, but we want, college tennis to be thought of in that same echelon, and we need our coaches to be so engaged on their campus and in their community that nobody would ever think about cutting them. So it's not just coming to practice for the student athletes. It's not just about the matches. It's also about what are you doing with community engagement, being involved with young people and seniors, and making sure the president and the AD show up at your matches. One of the other things that we're really proud at the ITA is our new website, for example. So for your audience, people who are fans of college tennis, if you don't regularly come to itatennis.com or wearecollegetennis.com, you should, because a number of years ago, there was no reason to come to the ITA website unless you just wanted to check out the rankings and results. But now we've tried to create this site as a destination, go-to, content-rich site for college tennis, and it covers all the divisions. We've created over the fall, I think, over 50 videos and 175 articles. So we would encourage people on a daily basis to not only come to the website, but to interact with us on social. We have 4 channels between Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And also go to the website and actually just join our newsletter. You can sign up for it. We've now got over 6,000 subscribers. So we really are trying to engage people, and not just the people who are already currently fans of college tennis, but people who might be tennis fans who want to become college tennis fans.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I mean, again, I think it's very impressive what you guys are doing and have been able to accomplish. And I like your point in terms of, hey, you have to lead in 3 stages. And, one of the things I was talking with my wife about a couple of days ago, I was just saying, we all think once the vaccine comes, things will be totally back to normal. But it's like now you have to put a new set of rules in place when that does happen, which brings about other unknown things, which also kind of another segue into that and talking about the unknown. I still think some things for, moving forward next year are up in the air. And I'm really curious about how you go about, planning in a time of uncertainty.
Yeah, great question. One of the things I'll tell you is we've done a lot of scenario planning. So instead of just kind of defining, oh, this is what the world's going to be about, the fact of the matter is we don't know. One of the things we've learned through the pandemic is you just don't know. It used to be that people did, long-term planning, and that meant 10 years. then maybe it was 2 or 3 years. Sometimes for people, long-term planning is Thursday, what's happening next week. So I'll give you a very specific example. We're talking about our 6-team indoor championships. And for example, those in the D1 space used to be 16 men and women. The first goal we have is just to make sure they happen. And that's not even a certainty. So
Yeah.
we've been working with our sites, and we had to cut them from 16 main draw finalists to 8. But the way I think about this is still, what is the goal? What are we trying to accomplish? So it's still show tennis is strong, show college tennis is a leader, show tennis is safe. But then what are all the various scenario plans? So we're getting ready for our kickoff weekend in January. That used to be more teams than it is. What are the things that we've learned? What are the lessons learned? And one of them, is that people can't travel as far. They don't want to get on airplanes. So we're changing some of our tournaments so that they're more in driving distance for teams instead of flying, for example. So we're not only doing scenario planning for spring of 21, but not only that, but fall of 21, and then even fall of 22 and 23. So, when we think about running the ITA, we like to say we're going to start with a vision. Then the mission is basically to serve college tennis and higher education, return leaders of tomorrow. And so we want to think about the vision, mission, then what are the strategies and the tactics? And right now, the vision has stayed the same even through the pandemic. The strategies basically have stayed the same. It's the tactics that are changing. So while we've always believed in championships, for example, when we couldn't have our regular regionals, that's when we added the fall tour. So we're right now saying, what will next fall look like? Maybe it has some of these fall tour events and we go back to the regionals. While everybody's, excited about the pandemic, and certainly I am, there's no guarantee that the pandemic is going to have everybody vaccinated until probably, this time next year. So there's just a lot of planning that's going on. And I can tell you that in addition to our board overseeing things, we have our operating committees, which is coach governance, but we also consult with medical experts. And fortunately, we're blessed with some really good ones. So Dr. Brian Hainline, who's the chief medical officer of the NCAA, actually is a tennis guy. He actually was an achievement award winner for the ITA and actually serves as the first vice president for the USTA. And then there's guys like Dr. Mark Kovacs has been on our board. He was an NCAA tennis champion. Who works now as a consultant with both the Cleveland Cavaliers and the NBA. So in addition to our staff doing a lot of planning and our coaches doing a lot of planning, we do consult with outside experts. And the final thing I'll say, Chris, is you can't always be a futurist, but I like to kind of think like a futurist. There was a woman who called herself a futurist, whose name was Faith Popcorn. And she used to write the Popcorn Report, and she tried to speculate on what the world would be like. So I would encourage people who are leaders to not only think about kind of the intended consequences, but what are the unintended consequences. So we try to think a little bit as a futurist, but I'll end by saying we also have learned in this pandemic world, we have to be fluid and flexible. You just can't get your plans too locked in. I think there's an old Yiddish saying that's something like, when people plan, God laughs. So we can do our best planning, but the world, changes. So certainly we hope the pandemic comes to an end and we get back to some normalcy. But even then, there's going to be a lot of carnage left over in each athletic department. Budgets are going to be cut and things are going to have to be rebuilt. So there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a 2 or 3 pronged approach, right? It's getting through it, but then dealing with the aftermath and the unknown is, if you ask me how long is that going to last, so I don't know, and I don't think many people know. But to your point, I think you're really thinking about it the right way. And for me, I like to say I just take things one day at a time, because things are changing so rapidly. The news is ever changing, and to your point, if you try to plan, God laughs. So you can take it one day at a time. I really believe, that's the key to success, or coming out on the other side of something like this, for sure.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I think you're spot on. I mean, one of the things I've always said, and you're proof of this as well, is when I said our mission was to serve tennis and return the leaders, it's your generation that's going to take all of this, forward. And as we joked early on, I'm a 65-year-old guy who still wakes up excited and loves tennis, but we're trying to make sure that the people of your generation, are becoming the leaders, because you think in a little different way than old guys like, myself. But together, the ecosystem for tennis is strong. I mean, the one thing about our sport is a lot of people are passionate about tennis. They not only love tennis, but it really is a sport of a lifetime. I mean, you can play as a kid, you can play in college, you
yeah.
can play after college, you can play up through the 90 USTA national championship. So we have a lot of people who are really rooting for tennis to get back on track.
Yeah, it's a lifelong sport, and it's something, while I enjoy other sports, the things I'm still doing today is I'm going out and hitting tennis balls. So
Yep.
I couldn't agree more with you on that forefront. One more question for you. One of the things that, I think it'd be good for people who are going to see this to know is how can, former college players, how can tennis enthusiasts, how can we help the ITA in this time?
Hey, thank you for that. And that's a very thoughtful question. I referenced some of the things in an earlier answer. One is to go to the website. Two is to follow on social. Three, when you go to the website, you can sign up for the newsletter. One of the things I can tell you is that this is the first time in our history that we've actually launched an ITA annual fundraising campaign. So there is a donate now button. But for former college players, if you don't know about it, we actually have a college tennis alumni network, and you can sign up for that. It's now up to 3,000 members. It has its own website. You get contacted for a number of events. It really is almost a mini LinkedIn for tennis folks. And I would also say, aside from supporting the ITA, what people can really do is support the tennis programs in their own community. So get to know your coaches, men and women, go to matches, make sure your fans get on their alumni lists, get on their fan base list. But you can function locally as well as supporting the ITA, because every program really just needs to be lifted up in its own community. But thank you for that, and we appreciate all the support that each and all can do for college tennis and the ITA.
Yeah, and I'm a part of the college alumni network, and I think it's
Cool.
amazing just because I now can hit up or call 10 people who wants to maybe hit balls, and we can share that experience of tennis and learn about something new. I mean, the one thing that I never thought would happen is no matter where, I travel, I can always use the network to find people who want to play, and we have something in common, which is playing college tennis at any level,
Yep.
which is impressive, by the way, like I said, at any level. So again, I think that's something good, and it's good to know how we can help. And my hope is that when this comes out, people obviously will be able to start helping not only you guys, but like you said, and help their local colleges in their community and get to know what's going on. I mean, I think the biggest thing is just about knowing, and once people know, then they can figure out how they can help personally.
Very cool. Thanks.
Yeah, well, that's all the questions I have for you. This was great, Tim. I have to say I really appreciate the time, and I'm really excited to watch you guys, outside looking in and see how things come together for the ITA, for college tennis, and to see the role and the brand of the ITA to continue to grow. It's exciting for me, and I know it's going to be even more exciting for you as well.
Well, thank you, and good luck with you and your work, and let's stay in touch.